بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. And welcome everybody to this wonderful free webinar on a mindful Dhul-Hijja, 5 lessons for spiritual emotional intelligence with Wadud Hasan. My name is Ahmed Faris. I'm the founder of the Product Muslim Company. And today my camera decided not to work, so hence my camera is not on. But we have, alhamdulillah, we have Wadud there, inshallah ta'ala, to be with you, to engage with you, and to work with you through this presentation, inshallah ta'ala. Brother Wadud is a dear friend of mine, also a neighbor. He lives in Dallas, same as I do. And mashallah, he has been somebody who really has focused his attention and focused his research and study in this area of mindfulness. But what really attracted me to Wadud's work is not only is that he has focused on the topic of mindfulness, but he's also tried to understand and to ground it and to see where does our faith talk about mindfulness and emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence, and how does that applies to our professional setting and applies to our work and our environment and organization, inshallah ta'ala. Moreover, Wadud also doesn't just talk the talk, he also walks the walk. I've met him in a couple of conferences, and he's always led, very powerful mindfulness sessions. And him and his wife, work on a project called Define 360, which really does amazing work with Muslim, especially Muslim youth, on trying to train them on mindfulness, emotional intelligence. So Wadud is the founder of Mindfulness Matters Leadership Institute. So you can check it out on mindfulnessmatters.us. I'll put the link in the chat soon. And this institute focuses on mindfulness, emotional intelligence to develop leadership and character development, and to help people and organizations have the tools for personal, professional, and organizational transformation. And with that, so Wadud also has done a lot of study. Like I said, he graduated from leadership in a leadership and organizational performance. He graduated. He's got his graduate studies in leadership and organizational development, organizational performance at Vanderbilt University. He's done his leadership training at Harvard, IDEO, and Neuroscience Academy. And he's also a certified mindfulness teacher through the Search Inside Yourself mindfulness program, which is a program that started at Google. So Wadud, thank you so much for joining us. Really honored to have you with us. Wadud will speak for about 35 minutes presenting his material. And then we'll talk more about our upcoming mindfulness masterclass, which I'm really excited to talk about, inshallah ta'ala. We'll share more details about the mindfulness masterclass that Wadud will be presenting at Productive Muslim Company, inshallah ta'ala, in about a few weeks' time. And then we'll open up for Q&A, inshallah ta'ala. So the duration of this is about 60 minutes plus Q&A, and you will get the recording and the slides, inshallah ta'ala, after this session, inshallah. So you get the recording sent to you, and you'll be able to watch it, and if to benefit, inshallah, from it. With that, I want to pass it over to Wadud, and Bismillah, take it away.
Jazakallah khair. Bismillah, as-salatu was-salam ala Rasulillah. So we are going to talk about a mindful Dhul-Hijja. And we're in the blessed 10 days of Dhul-Hijja, and there is, mashallah, a lot happening around the world. People are yearning to simulate the experience of Hajj, at least through a heart, at least having that sense of mindfulness of the traditions, the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham and his family, and how the sacrifice and how the qualities of the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam were preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that is commemorated through this beautiful act. So even though we're yearning to be there physically, at least spiritually and mentally, hopefully we're able to have that sense of yearning and that sense of mindfulness of Allah. And we're trying to revive those qualities of mindfulness here that can help us develop our sense of spiritual and emotional intelligence. Okay, so starting with this graphic that you've seen recently on the Productive Muslim platform, the difference between worldly mindfulness and Islamic mindfulness. So mindfulness in general has been a topic that if you just search it in PubMed, which is a research search website, you'll see that the amount of research around the world, especially in neuroscience research around the world, on the benefits of mindfulness and our health, our brain and behavioral science has skyrocketed in the last 2 decades. And part of the reason is because we have a lot of new technology in the last few decades that are available to us to really try to scan the brain and try to see the effect of focus and calmness, and what induces the calmness, what makes our brain stronger, what makes our heart stronger, what makes us healthier. So this has become a new science, and just like exercise is the fuel to the body in the modern neuroscience and the mental health world, mindfulness is emerging as the fuel for the mind, the way that the tools and strategies to train your mind. It is a neuroscience-based approach that we're seeing in the U.S. and people that are leading the research around the world. It's concerned with emotional well-being, cultivating the mind, and foundation for emotional intelligence. If you're not able to be mindful of, your body, your feelings, your emotions, you're not going to be able to be mindful of the person next to you. You have to be able to be present to really, be self-aware as a leader and also be able to lead others in a mindful way. So definitely there are some benefits there. And the benefits are huge. And in terms of, kind of like training the mindset as well, training focus and productivity, connecting with people, and also mindfulness is a strong foundation upon which Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence and empathy building is based on. However, in Islamic mindfulness, we have God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the center of that awareness and consciousness. That, of course, he wants us to be spiritually, he wants us to be emotionally intelligent, because our Prophet ﷺ was the best example of emotional intelligence, prophetic emotional intelligence, how he was present with people, how he listened to people, how he connected with people. But it was deeply rooted. It was not a lonely mindfulness. To my mind, if you're just trying to do all of that work, on your own, by yourself, without anybody around, without that connection to God, and also devoid of the understanding that we have a soul, that the body remains, but the soul moves on. And that soul, that connection to the soul, the connection to the heart, the connection to the heart and mind. And there are emerging research around how the heart is connected to the brain, that the heart has 40,000 neurons and the brain has about 100 billion neurons. And who leads? Is it the mind? Is it the brain? Or is it the heart? And what does mind mean? What does aql mean and intelligence mean? So in our deen, we see that there is a strong sense of taqwa and mindfulness of God that is rooted, hahuna, the Prophet said, in the heart, and that the heart is able to lead. The heart is able to everything. When we correct the heart, when you rectify the heart, we know the beautiful hadith of the Prophet that all the actions from the limbs are corrected. So cultivating the heart, which is connected to the mind, which is connected to the gut. And it's really important that we are talking about it in a sense that we're not alone when we're sitting and we're being mindful and we're trying to train our mind, but we have Allah with us. He's always there. So with that, I'm going to do a quick polling to see how are you arriving today. I'm sure that a lot of times, from a mindfulness perspective, our bodies are here, we are here in this call, but our minds are somewhere else. Our minds are wandering and it's not here. How can we be here with our mind and our body? So if you can go to menti.com and enter this code 401225. So I'm going to share my other screen where you can see the answers coming in. So just give me a second here. I'll pull it up again. All right, here we are. Presenting the first question, how are you arriving today? And I really appreciate there's no right or wrong answer here. Just if I could use a word or up to 3 words, how are you arriving today? And it can be good, it can be, we can be here, we can be distracted. And I see the distraction there, and that's amazing. That is really, really good, because sometimes we need to focus on where we are. And that is, self-awareness. That is emotional intelligence. Just knowing where we are is the first step of mindfulness, knowing that we're distracted. And you know what? As soon as you acknowledge that you're distracted, you have gone beyond being distracted, because attention, is paying attention to an object or a thing, but meta attention is our ability to pay attention to our attention itself. So I appreciate that. Some people are saying they're stressed, and I really appreciate we're going through a special type of a time. We live in a VUCA world. We talked about it in our recent article that we are living in a volatile and ever-changing world, and we can feel some uncertainties and stress. But I also see a lot of beautiful things. People are still, bringing that sense of gratefulness and hopefulness, and I love everything that's coming here on the screen. Eager to learn. Thank you so much for that. But also understand the multitasking. I see that there. Being anxious and stressed, I see those as well. Curious, a really important quality, being curious and open, being open to learning. One of the things that I always say about our mindfulness sessions is that just have a beginner's mind. Like our teachers teach us that when we sit down to learn knowledge, I've learned from my teachers that empty your heart so that you're able to fully take it in. If you feel like your cup is full, you're not going to be able to take it in. So emptying our heart before we listen, before we get new knowledge is really important. But there, I can see worried, struggling, depressed. I can see some of those qualities: broken heart, unfocused, full of tasks. So just for a moment, can we all take a deep breath just to take it in, to land it? Just take a deep breath. There is a lot here, and I welcome all of it. And it's okay to understand and be with our feelings, whether sometimes they may be positive on the outwardly positive, or they may be a little bit challenging, but they are all emotions that we go through as human beings, and that they're okay. It's okay to have those emotions. Stopping the share. Thank you so much for that. Going back to my presentation. So we saw that how are you arriving today, and we will check in with each other again at the end of the presentation and see how are we feeling. So invite you all to be here in this moment. Just treat the next few minutes as your self-care. How can I learn something from here? Even if it's one thing that I can learn that make me be more mindful of God, or make me have a higher sense of spiritual emotional intelligence in the way that I relate to God, the way that I relate to people, the way that I lead, the way that I work. Even if it's one thing that you take away, it's a blessing, and we want to be here with each other. So invite you to be in the space with each other, with our mind and our body together for the next few minutes. All right, so going to the 5 qualities that I'll talk about today: silence, reliance, obedience, remembrance, and effort with hope. Effort with hope. These are the 5 things that we're going to talk about to build a sense of mindfulness in this beautiful time of Dhul-Hijja. So the first thing we'll talk about is silence. Silence, sometimes also referred to, as the sacred pause. The sacred pause, and sometimes it also means just stopping. When you feel you're emotionally distracted, or you feel that you're getting drained. You feel that you may not be leading in the right way. You feel that you're not really showing up with your team with empathy or compassion. Just stopping for a moment and giving yourself some time. So really important, silence. And we learned that from Dhul-Hijja because the entire, we commemorate the tradition and the beautiful tradition of Ibrahim alayhi salam and his family. So silence is the beginning, because we're talking about, in his quest to please God and to live his purpose, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was ordered to leave his family in the middle of nowhere. And one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him to do while he was leaving, that he wasn't able to speak. He couldn't speak. He had to be silent, so that he was not able to speak a word. And as he was leaving, he adopted this silence. And silence is something that, sometimes it means that we are having this sense of mindfulness of God, where perhaps closing our mouth and our tongue, and just being there in that moment and just being silent can help make the signs of God apparent. Just like when Zakaria alayhi salam was also ordered to be silent for a few days, or when Maryam alayhi salam was ordered to be silent, and she just pointed to the baby, and the wisdom and the insight that was going to come from Allah came through the baby, from Isa alayhi salam. So this lesson of silence, that he was silent, and this silence is really important to build spiritual intelligence. That the prophetic silence, this was embodied by the Prophet himself, and it is narrated that the Prophet would observe long periods of silence. He would observe long periods of silence. And that, what is silence? Somebody asked, what is silence? And it means that you give up preoccupation of the past and the future, and you be here in the present. So this is something that is really important, that sometimes we might say, oh yeah, I'm just going to be silent. But then if our mind is continuously being either in the past or the present or the future, then we're not able to be silent in the moment. So just sometimes being silent and being in the moment, just really being at this moment. This is really important, and this is something that is clarified by our scholars, and this is the true definition of mindfulness, that when you're able to just sometimes sit in silence and you be here in the present, of course, from Islamic perspective, be here also with the awareness of God so that you're able to find this sense of calmness, clarity, and wisdom. And the Prophet said to Abu Dharr that you must have good character and observe long periods of silence. By the one in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, no one can behave with deeds more beloved to Allah than these two. So silence is beloved to Allah. Wow. Something that we need to really remember, that silence is supposed to be a really, defining quality of mindfulness and a defining quality of spiritual intelligence. And we recently talked about spiritual intelligence and hikmah, how hikmah is that spiritual intelligence, the spiritual insight. And how are they related? Abu Dharr said, silence is a form of wisdom, hikmah. It is hikmah, and wisdom is spiritual intelligence. Abu Dharr said, silence is a form of wisdom, yet few people practice it. And Wahab bin Munabbih, rahimahullah, said that the doctors, the Hakim, they agreed that the head of medicine is diet. And the wise ones agreed that the head of wisdom, hikmah, is silence. So it's really important that to build spiritual intelligence, we remember, we don't forget this specific thing happened to Ibrahim alayhi salam as he was leaving his family, and the wisdom behind that order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be silent. So from modern neuroscience perspective, there are so many benefits of silence. There was research, and they found at Imke Kurse, one of the biologists at Duke University, found that 2 hours, just 2 hours of silence per day prompted cell development in the hippocampus. The hippocampus in the brain is related to long-term memory retention, formation of long-term memory. So long-term memory and then your rational part of the brain, working based off of those memory, it's really important to develop, and have a healthy brain, to have this quality of mindfulness, the quality of silence is really important. There's been research that a lot of noise releases stress hormones. So there's too much noise all the time, and you don't have time to take time out of that noise. It's in the long run, it is, not good, not healthy for your brain. Research has also shown that stress, all the constant attention, some of you put multitasking, right? Or too many tasks in your hand, distracted, there's so much going on. So all of that happening all the time, the stress, you have this sense of stress that happens in your prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that is right below our forehead. It's what makes us human. It is the center for intelligent human thinking, intelligent decision making, what separates us from animals. That there are animals that are so much bigger than us, larger than us, faster than us, mightier than us, but we can rule them all by this ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, the intelligence and the aql. And the prefrontal cortex is a part of the brain that makes the rational decision making. And that is stressed when you are continuously multitasking or continuously distracted. So having a sense of calmness and mindfulness and silence helps calm that. When we spend time alone in silence, our brains are able to relax, and we're able to release that constant focus. We're able to find clarity. So 3 key benefits here of silence is that we have, as Muslims, we have spiritual mindfulness, that we can sit in silence, we can have a sense of awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not be preoccupied in the past or the future, just be in the present. Learn to be in the present, learn to be focused in the present. And how do you do that from neuroscience perspective? There are many different ways that you can do that. One of the ways is focusing on the breath, how the breath activates the parasympathetic system of the body. And it helps you calm the mind and calm the mind and calm the body. And silence helps us do emotional regulation. And we know that from prophetic guidance that the Prophet said that emotions, when you're angry, what you have to be silent. You do not speak when you're silent. It's a really important factor in emotional regulation and building emotional intelligence. And then silence also helps us get to the wisdom, like we've talked about. These are the 3 key benefits of silence. Now, the lesson here, if we wanted to say it in one sentence, that be silent and God's signs and wisdom will become apparent. So be silent, be aware of God, be in the moment, and sometimes without speaking and being silent can help us calm ourselves to a point where we can see more clearly. We can see, and the wisdom, and until the signs and wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes more apparent. This is really important from a professional perspective, that sometimes when problems are difficult, your organization is going a certain way, and you feel that, the vision and the mission statement and the strategy that you made is completely changing. And what we have seen in the recent months during the pandemic, that so many things are changing, the teams are changing, people are being let go, the organizational structure is changing, strategy is changing, the direction is changing, and you feel a little lost. And sometimes, deep contemplation and reflection and awareness and remembrance of Allah can help us gain that sense of wisdom, gain that sense of clarity. So we need time out sometimes to be in a state of mindfulness to lead from a better place. Okay, real fast in the chat window, can you think of a time when silence helped you act with spiritual and emotional intelligence? So based on this discussion so far, we can talk a lot about each of the pillars of the 5 things that we're talking about today, but I chose to focus on this first point. I'll go over the next 4 points as well, but this was something that I wanted to really emphasize. So in the chat, let me open that up. Yes, really beautiful comment here from Hassanat Ahmed. Silence of the tongue has been easy, but silence of the mind is much more difficult. That is true. That is true. And that is why we need deeper mindfulness training. We need deeper, tool of contemplation, that how do we contemplate, how do we meditate, how do we be in a state of mindfulness that can help us calm our mind and make our mind present. The beauty of worship, sujood and qiyam, that you have a state of silence from the world when you are communicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course. Avoiding unneeded arguments, when you just stop and you don't want to get into argument, because argument takes away the barakah, right? Yes. Yeah, dealing with children sometimes, that you get carried away, and mindfulness is your ability to not get carried away. Mindfulness is your ability to be mindful in the moment and just kind of, have this sense of spiritual, emotional intelligence, regulation, until you are in a better place to talk. Making an important decision, very important, yes. Have the clarity of situation. So you have been practicing some form of silence and sometimes in your life. And how can we go deeper in that? How can we really understand that this is a prophetic sunnah, and this is a prophetic example? This is a prophetic thing, even tied to the whole practice of Hajj. It's a prophetic tradition, even from Ibrahim alayhi salam, and it's a neuroscientific benefit of, and foundation of building spiritual and emotional intelligence. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much, and I'll go back. I'll come back here to the next point, which is reliance. The second way to be mindful in Dhul-Hijja, in incorporating these lessons of Dhul-Hijja, lessons from the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the sense of reliance, that when Ibrahim alayhi salam relied on God, and so did Hajar, that when he just nodded, like in Hajar said, is it by the command of Allah? And when he just nodded and he just said, he's affirmed that yes, it is Allah's command, and she said, and she believed that Allah will not waste them, Allah will take care of them. And having this sense of a reliance on God, having this sense of, affirmation, like every time we go outside our house, what do we say? Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, and this is also tied to decision making. When you are making decisions, even at an organization level, at a team level, you're making a difficult decision for your organization, and you have consulted everyone, you've done istikhara, you've talked to Allah, you've made shura, you've asked your companions, you made dua, you went through, a reflection and contemplation, and you finally, achieved some clarity to make a decision. that once you've made the decision, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that once you have, وَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ, فَإِذ, when you have created that sense of, adam, sense of, decision making, then فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Then you have the sense of, and have full reliance on God. Then have reliance. You made the decision, move forward. Just be real, just rely and move forward. So really important to calm ourselves when we continuously feel this sense of anxiety or stress, like, did I make the right decision? Was that the right thing? Of course, before decision making, there is a sense of mindfulness and spiritual intelligence that is involved. But once you made the decision, you have to rely. Once Ibrahim is leaving and he is moving forward, he's moving forward with that sense of affirmation, tawakkaltu ala Allah, affirm in your reliance on God. It's really important to have that sense of affirmation. Every time you're going out, Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allah. In the pandemic, right? When you're going out, and now going out is a task that people are feeling like, oh God, like, do I have my mask and do I have the sanitizer and what do I touch, what do I not touch? All of that social distancing. And you're in this time that we're going through Dhul-Hijja, these days of Dhul-Hijja, the days of Hajj, the days of remembering Ibrahim alayhi salam, his family's tradition, remembering this beautiful quality of mindfulness, that having this sense of reliance, just have the sense of affirmation in your heart, that Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, affirming that Allah is with me. Allah is with me. And this affirmation is echoed from the divine. And this is the beauty of Islamic mindfulness, that God and his promise is attached to all the different elements of mindfulness of God. Meaning that the angels are announcing that you have been protected, you've been guided, you've been sufficed. When we say Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, when we say that in the name of God, I'm affirming my full reliance on God. It's really important. There has been a lot of research around affirmation, even though in neuroscience research, like we talked about, from a science perspective, it's devoid of the soul and the God. But it still gives us the ability to see. To me, neuroscience research, brain and behavioral science research are signs of God in our body, are signs, ayat, signs of Allah in our body. So affirmation activates areas of the brain connected to self-related processing, which can act as an emotional buffer. So basically, when you're giving affirmation that, so from a very scientific background, from a self, motivation, self-affirmation background, like, I can do this, I am in the driver's seat and I can make this happen. Saying these positive things to yourself, there has been a lot of research around affirmation that it can act as an emotional buffer to any painful, negative, or threatening information. You feel like, no, I have the capacity. I am able to do this. And there has been some research that people that take stress as a challenge, they're able to get through that stress, with better health than people that take stress as like, oh my God, it's too stressful, I'm not gonna be able to do this. Or I can't handle this anymore. So instead, if you say it's a challenge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, that Allah will not place any burden that I cannot bear. And with Allah's help, I can do this. Allah is with me and I can do this. And see, this is so much better. This is so much better with the companionship of God and the help of God and the awareness and mindfulness of God, because I'm not lonely working on just with myself. So this is really important that, alhamdulillah, we're blessed that we can train on mindfulness, but from a spiritual, soul-centric, God-centric way. And this can be a buffer, a reliance and affirmation of Allah can be a buffer from negative thoughts and threatening thoughts and distracting thoughts, and just kind of calm us down. Rely on God and He will be sufficient. No decisions you're making at your organization level, your team level, at home, relying on God. Of course, having a sense of mindfulness and spiritual intelligence before you make the decision. Once you make it, once you do it, just rely and move forward. All right. The third thing is obedience and just showing up that sometimes, all you have to do is just show up to the duty that you're being assigned to. So show up to do what is good. Show up to do what is asked of you, especially from God, of course. And then also in the service of people, sometimes you just have to show up. The family of Ibrahim proved their unwavering commitment to obey Allah, to obeying God. And this obedience, it's sometimes, it can just mean showing up for your salah. Like during the uncertainty, during the difficult time that sometimes you go through, you have a stressful day, there's so much going on, but okay, there is a time for salah. And mashallah, Faris and the Productive Muslim team recently published the article on salah, that how salah can be the antidote to this pandemic, that no matter what's happening around the world, you have your time to just focus. You have your time to make wudu. You have your time to focus on salah. And standing for salah, that gives you that sense of mindfulness. Okay, from everything else, now I'm collecting my mind, my body, and I'm standing. And this sense of just obedience and sense of showing up, it helps you center and helps you bring yourself back. It activates the rational part of the brain, calms down the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain. And this is something that we see from Ibrahim alayhi salam's dua, right? Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "Rabbana inni askantu min zurriyati biwadin ghayri zar'i inda baytika al-muharram." Oh Lord, I have settled some of my offspring in a barren valley near a sacred house, oh Lord, so that they may establish prayer. They may establish prayer. So they're focused on that obedience. They're focused on establishing this. They're focused on their purpose. They're focused on the God, we're here and we're living in the middle of nowhere. And before he asked for fruits, before he asked for the people's, rahmah or mercy, the hearts of the believers inclined towards them and providing them with fruits so that they may be thankful. Before he said any of that, he first said, establishing my obedience to you. Because if I obey you, if I take care of your command, you will take care of us. If we pray to you, you will not forget us. If we remember you, you will remember us. So this is a quality that is really important. And there has been some research, there's been some groundbreaking research by Andrew Newberg, and he has done some work on, this God-centric prayer and the ability to look at what prayer does to the brain. And he looked at, like 12 minutes a day prayer, 8 weeks, improve mental stability and focus by 10 to 15%. So only thing is that, are we praying with a sense of mindfulness? Are we praying with a deep sense of khushu', right? And how can we learn to calm and focus our mind on our body? And how can we have a deeper sense of spiritual intelligence that can help us from a mindset perspective and also mind training perspective to be focused in our salah, in our prayer, in our sense of obedience when you're ready to show up in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So obey God, even if it doesn't make sense sometimes, and do it and then protect his command, he will protect you. This is a really important lesson of this sense of obedience and sense of showing up. And then remembering God and reaching out to him, remembrance, supplication, whether it is through, there are different forms of remembrance. Here we're talking about remembrance and being really in a state of mindfulness and remembrance through dua, through supplicating to God. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah and many other scholars have talked about various ways of doing this Islamic muraqabah or mindfulness or meditation, and like dhikr or reading the Quran or different forms. But one special one is dua. And I was talking to one of my Christian friends who's a mindfulness trainer, and he does mindfulness work with his church and with his congregation. And I was just asking him about how is his relationship, how is the relationship mindfulness in their faith, and how does he see people learning about mindfulness. And he said that whenever people are praying, they're really in their prayer and that supplication mode, they feel that state of mindfulness. And he said, how about you guys? And I said, that, yeah, we have 5 times prayer. And then I realized that what he was talking about, people, reading things in their own language and reading their prayer in English, and they're just kind of focusing on the meaning. And then he feels that, yes, they feel a sense of mindfulness in that. On the other hand, we need a little bit of training to understand, because sometimes we don't understand what we're saying in our salah. So we need that training to really have this sense of mindfulness. But one place where we all can relate to this sense of mindfulness and dua, reaching out to God. And this happens, even if someone doesn't believe and they're not very high on their maybe spiritual sense or spiritual practice, but you see that when they're really desperate, they reach out to this higher power. And this is something that Allah SWT programmed in our soul, because our soul witness, qalu bala, the alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And our soul witness. So we have this yearning. And we are reaching out, even if the message has not received somebody in the middle of nowhere, in the rainforest, an island, they would pray to someone. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us as dua, but Allah has given us through his divine wisdom, he has given us the ability to understand from Prophet Ibrahim, our Prophet ﷺ, about how to reach out from our heart through dua. It's a beautiful practice. Dua is a really important practice. And how did you feel after mindful dua? Dua is our release. Dua is our way to activate our calmness, our clarity. Dua is our way to, rest all our anxiety and depression. So this is a really important way to remember and supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there has been research around prayer and supplication, that how it can lower your heart rate, it can calm your brain activity in a positive way. It can, it can release feel-good chemicals in your body. So dua has this power. How do you feel after mindful dua? After remembering God and really pouring your heart out and having the sense of mindfulness. And what happens there? All the qualities we're talking about here. We're talking about, the quality of silence. We're talking about the quality of reliance, quality of obedience. All that comes together when you're really in a state of mindfulness, and quality of presence. You're being in a state of presence when you're making dua. So it's really important that when was a time that you felt, how did you feel after mindful, like you really were in your dua? How did you feel? So in the chat window, just share maybe one or two, just for the sake of just looking at the chat window for a second, just to interact with you a little. You feel the sense of energy. You feel relaxed. You feel relief. And where does the energy come from? You're just drained and you didn't have any more capacity and you just poured your heart out. Where did it come from? So this is what spiritual mindfulness is about, that when we have the sense of a God-centric mindfulness, it refuels us. Can it happen, in a neuroscience, in a very scientific, just training the mind type of way? Yes, it can also happen with silence, calmness, focusing on the breath. People can calm themselves, and there is mental well-being that Allah has gifted human beings with. However, when you attach with iman and faith and God, it just becomes complete through our deen. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. So remembering this special quality of Dhul-Hijja, that Dhul-Hijja is a special time to make dua, special time. And we know that Arafah, the day of Arafah, which is Hajj, the Hajj is Arafah. What people do is all day they're remembering and they're reviving this practice of Ibrahim alayhi salam. They're reviving the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So remember him and he'll remember you. Ask him and he will answer. And this ask him and he will answer, this takes us to the last, but not least, the fifth quality here about continuous effort with hope of God's relief. That after dua, after you've had this sense of mindfulness, after you build your spiritual emotional intelligence, you still have to, you can't just be that state all the time, right? You can't say, oh, I'm just feeling really good being silent, so I'm just going to be here. I'm not going to show up. You still have to show up. Like we showed up to God, we also have to show up to serve, show up at our organization, lead, change, make difficult decisions, and come up with new strategies, come up with a new vision, mission statement, make some difficult decisions. And all of that, with all of that effort that you show up with that foundation of mindfulness and spiritual intelligence, with a deep sense of hope of God's relief. So, and that is what we see in Hajar, that they had this belief that God will take care of us, but she still got up to make that effort. And she made that effort with this deep sense of relief, deep sense of hope in God's relief, that she ran between Safa and Marwa. She ran between Safa and Marwa, and she kept running, and she didn't give up. She didn't go one time and say, oh yeah, I don't know where it's coming from. I got to sit. And what would most people do? That they don't see anything. There's nothing apparent to them. So even if there is nothing apparent, because of that deep sense of mindfulness of God and reliance and remembrance and dua, then now we're going into a state where we're making the effort and we know that relief is coming. We have this hope. We have this positive expectation because God deals with his servant as they think of him. Hadith al-Qudsi, that I am with my servant as they think of me. So having a sense of hope and running between Safa and Marwa and looking for relief. So hope, there is a lot of research around hope. That hope therapy, when people give up hope, remember that in our deen, one of the major sins is giving up hope in the mercy of God. That if you give up hope in the mercy of God, God will replace you and bring you another people that will sin, but they will hope for God's forgiveness. So this is really important to have this sense of hope. This is essential to our belief. That iman is hope and fear. Of course, we have a healthy sense of fear, but we have this deep sense of hope. And hope, there is a lot of research, I just quoted one here, correlates significantly and negatively with anxiety. That hope, it is a negative, it really helps overcome anxiety and stress. When you feel that you are vulnerable, you're not able to control things are unpredictable, that's when you you of course lead from a sense of spiritual emotional intelligence. You lead from a sense of mindfulness of God, and then you have to have this deep sense of hope. This is really important. You keep making effort and keep hoping for the opening to come, And how does the opening come? Imam Ghazali rahimahullah said that mindfulness is an opening to the divine. Mindfulness is the opening to the divine. And when you're in a state of mindfulness, you find this sense of opening. How do you find the sense of opening? And Allah says, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ, if you have taqwa in Allah, if you're mindful of Allah, يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, I will give you the opening. I will give you from places, from places you could not expect. مَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ, that we did not even expect, and Allah will open the door. Opening will come with the mindfulness of God. So this opening is really important. How did the opening come for the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam? After all these elements that we talked about: silence, reliance, obedience, remembrance, and effort with hope. And then the opening came. Opening came in a way that Jibreel alayhi salam came down and hit the ground, and Zamzam came, and the opening came for them. And the opening in our life, opening in our teams, opening in our organizations, when we feel stuck at our home, in our relationships, it'll come when we stick to these principles. We stick to these 5 principles from the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam, 5 principles during Dhul-Hijja, but also beyond Dhul-Hijja, because Hajj is supposed to be a lesson for our life. Hajj is supposed to change ourselves like a newborn. After Hajj, what happens is that just like your mother gave birth to you, no sins left, and you go back in that state. So to do what? To continue the legacy and the tradition of Hajj for the rest of your life. So it's really important to take these lessons out of Dhul-Hijja, apply it now in these 10 days, apply it while you were fasting, while you're making dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while you were doing takbir, tahmid, and tahleed, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu wa lillahi alhamd. Also finding that sense of trying to look for, make sure that we're practicing these 5 elements and qualities of spiritual intelligence. Hoping for God's relief is the best act of worship. Our scholars have told us it's the best act of worship. Positivity during the most difficult and impossible problems. It's really important, having this sense of positivity. So build spiritual and emotional intelligence through silence, through reliance, through obedience, remembrance, and effort with hope. A mindful brain. When you're mindful, the prefrontal cortex, which is right behind your forehead, when that activates, it down regulates the amygdala, which is down below in the brain. Some of the scientists have explained them as like upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. The amygdala is like the siren of the brain when you are having strong emotions. How do you down regulate the stress, anxiety, and difficulty? By activating the rational part of the brain and mindfulness of God, mindfulness in general. It helps you activate the rational part of the brain. We'll talk a lot more about the brain science during our mindfulness masterclass. And Allah says about Hajj, mindfulness of God is the best provision. Tazawwadu فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ زَادِ التَّقْوَى. That, of course, take your provision, but remember the best of provision in mindfulness of God. That's the best of provision. وَاتَّقُونِي. So be mindful. Ya ulil albab, O people of intellect, O people of wisdom. So if you want wisdom, we have to have a sense of mindfulness, and that is hence our mindfulness masterclass, inshallah, that we're launching in a few weeks. We will do a short guided mindfulness practice, and then hopefully we'll have a little time for Q&A. It was narrated that there's no other days. The best days are these 10 days that we're going through, Dhul-Hijja, the first 10 days of Dhul-Hijja, and where there's no other days that these are more beloved to God than these 10 days. So recite a great deal of tahleel, takbir and tahmid, recite a great deal of them. So we'll do a guided practice. For this guided practice, what I'm going to do here is, okay, I'm going to lead you through this practice. Bismillah. We're going to do a guided mindfulness practice, everyone. So for this, I'm going to first invite you to be in a seat, be in a posture that helps you ground your mind and body in this place. So just take a deep breath. We've talked for a little bit and we learned things together. So just taking a deep breath in. Just letting all of it land, everything that we've talked about. And now can you sit in a way that can help us get in a state of mindfulness together? I'll do a guided practice here. So your lower back, support it on this chair that you're sitting. So the chair that you're sitting on, support your lower back. And then lengthen your upper back, lengthen your spine in a way that you have a sense of alertness, okay? If you want, you can face the Qibla. Of course, in a state of mindfulness, it's recommended, sunnah. Place your hands on your thighs like you do maybe in the tahiyat position, feeling your thighs. And this is because this is called grounding. We're just grounding in this moment in our own body, in our mind. And then feeling your feet on the ground, just feeling your feet on the ground, on the carpet or the hard floor, wherever you're sitting, feeling your feet on the ground. Okay, lowering our gaze, and closing your gaze perhaps. Imam al-Muhasibi, the many scholars have taught us about the practices of Islamic mindfulness. Imam al-Muhasibi is one of them, and he has told us about the importance of looking inward, looking in our heart, and quieting our inner voice. So not only we're quieting our outer voice, like our lips, our tongue, we're looking inward in our heart and bringing a sense of presence and remembrance of Allah in our heart, and quieting our inner voice. If our inner voice is saying, I'm not sure how this is going to be, oh, I'm not sure if I'm good at this, my mind is all over the place, just quieting the voice and say, just quiet for a few moments while I practice this sense of mindfulness of takbir, tahleel, and tahmeed. This is a specific mindfulness practice that I've designed for Dhul-Hijja. So lowering your gaze, closing your eyes, and being open and curious, making an intention that I'm doing this to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm doing this to learn how to practice mindfulness. I'm doing this to focus my mind and learn when my mind is in wanders, which is going to happen. When your mind wanders, bring it back. Okay, bismillah. Lowering your gaze, closing your eyes. I'm going to turn my video off so that you don't have to look at the video. Just lower your gaze, close your eyes, and look inward. Let's start by taking a deep breath in and a long breath out. Taking another deep breath in and a long breath out. Doing it one more time, taking a deep breath in, long breath out. Bismillah. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. First, we want to just gather and collect our mind before we start making dhikr. So we're going to gather our mind by focusing our mind on the breath. Why are we focusing on the breath? Because the breath sits between the mind and the body. It activates the parasympathetic system in our body to calm us down. So no need to lengthen or shorten the breath anymore, just breathing in and breathing out. Can you gather your kind and gentle attention on the process of breathing? Can you notice when the in-breath begins, when it ends, and when the out-breath begins, and the in-breath begins again? When is the breath most alive for you? Where is the breath most alive for you? Do you feel the breath at your nose? Do you feel the breath on your chest? You may place your hand there if needed. Do you feel your breath on your abs? Wherever the breath is most alive for you, just turning your mind away from all technology, distractions, and just being here focused, closed eyes, looking inward, feeling a sense of remembrance of Allah, just focusing on the breath for the next few seconds. If your mind wanders, that is completely normal. Just kindly bring your mind back. We'll call wherever the breath is most alive for you, we'll call it your anchor point. Collecting your gentle and kind attention on your anchor point breath. Relaxing our body. relaxing our mind, trying to gather attention here. And now with that same quality attention, let's transition to takbir. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. When Ibrahim alayhi salam in Fatwa Shamid comes, that when Ibrahim alayhi salam was about to sacrifice Ismail, the angels came with the ram to replace Ismail, they said, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he realized that the help of Allah came and Ismail spared, Ibrahim alayhi salam said, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. And Ismail alayhi salam said, Allahu Akbar walillahi alhamd. It comes in Fatwa Shami. So, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Whenever our mind wanders, bringing it back by saying, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than our thoughts. Allah is greater than whatever we're thinking. Can we train our mind to be here in a sense of, deep sense of mindfulness of God? Allah is greater than all of them, all the distraction. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Why do we keep saying Allahu Akbar to refocus in our salah? Because even after Allah, the first takbir, Allahu Akbar, we keep saying Allahu Akbar throughout our salah. And the reason we keep saying Allahu Akbar is because if our mind has wandered, we refocus ourselves. Allahu Akbar, come back to salah. Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than everything else I'm thinking about, coming back to Allah. Visualizing Allah's being the source of all safety, all assurance, all security. Allah is greater than all our worries, anxieties. How does peace and safety and mercy from Allah feel like? How can we visualize or feel in our heart the sense of mercy descending in our heart? Sense of peace descending in our heart? And with this phrase, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than all my worries. Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater than all my anxieties. Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater than my problem. It is not that how big of a problem that I have, but how great of a creator and God that I have. That He is greater than all my problems. He will take care of me. Bringing to your heart this sense of peace, knowing that Allah is with you, visualizing this peace descending upon your heart, and visualizing how does it feel to visualize that radiating from your heart to all the other parts of your body, to your hands, to your feet, to the rest of your body. In Hadith al-Qudsi, Allah says, I am with my servant as he thinks of me. So if we are remembering Allah, we're mindful of Allah, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, bringing a sense of smile that if I am mindful of Allah, if I know that I remember Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give me opening. Allah will give me relief. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than all my difficulties. Moving to La ilaha illallah. We'll engage with Tahleel, La ilaha illallah. We're asked in the hadith to renew our faith. The faith gets worn, our iman gets worn out like a cloth, like a dress. So we renew it by La ilaha illallah. Negating everything and then focusing on Allah. Who was there when nothing was there? La ilaha illallah. Who will be there when nothing will be there? La ilaha illallah. Who is closer than my jugular vein? La ilaha illallah. Who loves me more than my mother loves me. There is no one that can benefit me, harm me, give me, or take from me without Allah. La ilaha illallah. No one can make me happy or sad without the permission of Allah. So if our mind is wandering, La ilaha illallah, bring your mind back with illallah, focusing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La ilaha illallah. At work, as a leader, at home, we have difficult tasks. Sometimes we have failures, distractions, uncertainties. Knowing that nothing will harm me if I am remembering, if I am coming back to God, and through Him I can get through everything. La ilaha illallah. No one can harm, nothing can harm or benefit but Allah. La ilaha illallah. Expecting that protection from Allah. Whoever says La ilaha illallah, it becomes wajib for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect them and not punish them. So expecting with La ilaha illallah, the sense of safety, the sense of protection from Allah. Taking a deep breath in, a long breath out. La ilaha illallah. Expecting this sense of safety and security from Allah. Transitioning to tahmeed, the last part of this mindful practice. Lillahi alhamd. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd. That we are now praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bringing a sense of gratitude in our heart, that we start every salah with Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And Allah says, La in shakartum la azidannakum. Whoever will thank Him, Allah will grant him increase. It's beautiful that Allah has programmed increase in the first verse of Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening verse of Fatiha, the opening verse of the first surah we recite. He has literally programmed expansion and opening in the first verse of Fatiha. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, that we expect by praising Allah, by having a deep sense of gratitude to Allah, that He will grant us expansion. He will grant us opening, visualizing that deep sense of expansion and opening from Allah. Alhamdulillah, 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 walillahi alhamd. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Walillahi alhamd, walillahi alhamd. Having the deep sense of gratitude in our heart, bringing a sense of smile on your face for such a beautiful Creator who is the source of all blessings. At work, at home, as a leader, overcoming our negativity or temporary failures or loss by remembering to focus on there are thousands of and billions and millions of things that we still have to be grateful for. Even when one thing is going wrong, just looking inward in our own body, we have about 100 billion neurons in our brain to be thankful for. So just to thank Allah 100 billion times, how much time would it take? Having this deep sense of gratitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than everything, all our worries, distractions, and worries. La ilaha illallah. No one can harm or benefit but Allah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater, Allah is greater. Walillahi alhamd. Having this deep sense of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So using this takbir, tahmeed, and tahleel during the last 10 days of Dhul-Hijja to practice our sense of mindfulness, calming our mind, focusing our mind, and practicing mindfulness of God. Before we close this practice, just if you can close your eyes just for a few more seconds and now bring your attention back to your breath. Just breathing in and breathing out. Just trying to bring the sense of gentle and kind gathering of your attention, bringing a sense of stability to your mind by focusing on this moment together with each other. Muhammad. You can open your eyes, inshallah, come back to each other. That was a practice for takbir, tahleel, and tahmeed, having a deep sense of reflection, contemplation in Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Lillahi alhamd. I will do a quick poll here about this practice. How are you feeling now? We've asked you how did you arrive at the beginning of the presentation. We're going to ask you now, how are you feeling now? Go to menti.com, enter your code 401225, and I'll share the screen so you can see the results coming in. Okay, this was how are you arriving today. So exit that and come back to how are you feeling now, presenting that. Okay, so go to menti.com and 401225, relaxed. The biggest word we had last time was distraction, but we also had, both positive and challenging emotions. Grateful. And I appreciate someone sharing about the blues. That's okay. All emotions are welcome and we work with them, and just the awareness of them helps us overcome them. Sleepy is really important too, because sometimes your mind just, when we do mindfulness practices, I see some people that tend to, or it's going back to sleep. And that's why I tell normally people to just be, lengthen their spine and having a sense of alertness in the body. But when you haven't given yourself enough time to sleep or rest, it's natural that your body is asking for some rest, and that's okay. But calmness, relaxation, some of the bigger words here are the words that many of you are typing the same words. Then those words will show up as the biggest word here: calm, relaxed, peaceful, content, emotional, and that's okay. Peace, blessed, hopeful, inshallah. Thank you, everyone. So alhamdulillah, we can see that protected and refreshed. There's some beautiful words here. Accepting, tranquility, tears flowing. I appreciate sharing that emotion about tears flowing, Sireen. So alhamdulillah, we see that just with a little bit of practice, we see a shift here from the beginning of the presentation to after the mindfulness practice. May Allah grant us tawfiq to grow in our spiritual and emotional intelligence, in our state of mindfulness, oh God. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Muhammad. Jazakallah khair. Sorry, Muhammad, I've taken a little longer than I should have.
Not at all. Nothing. Take as long as you want, mashallah. Barakallah fiik, jazakallah khair. Wadud, really appreciate it. I think on behalf of everybody, this was just a beautiful, powerful experience, not just intellectually, but inshallah, spiritually and emotionally. I'll be honest, I was one of those people, a few years back who was, a bit skeptical of this whole mindfulness movement. I'm like, yeah, with some kind of new age stuff, some kind of interesting, like, what is this stuff? It's not practical. I'm the productive guy. I just get things done, right? It's not about mindfulness, getting grounded. But
Right.
SubhanAllah, through reading through Wadud's work and do my own research, just realize the power and importance of something like this. And not just in terms of mental emotional intelligence, but really it's about spiritual intelligence. I feel like sometimes this is something, an area that as Muslims we need to dive into, connecting the mindfulness and spiritual and emotional work with our spirituality, because that is our purpose in life. Our purpose in life is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and any tool that helps us get there, any skill that helps us get there, we should be at the forefront of its research and learning and developing and guiding people towards a way that connects them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brings closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So alhamdulillah, I'm honored, as mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I'm honored that we've partnered with Wadud to present something that I feel is needed in our community. This is the first time we're offering this. It is a mindfulness masterclass. So for those who know Product Muslim Company, we do offer these live online programs that usually span at least 6 weeks, because we believe that learning cannot happen in one webinar or just in one class. Learning happens over time, a lot of times, and learning happens with practice. So we found this model that seems to work and seems to make impactful learning. This is the model of live instructional learning, especially doing with webinars these days. And we're partnering with Dhul for the first time to present a 6-week online masterclass that connects Islamic tradition with mindfulness science to help you deal with the negativity, with the uncertainty, and with the emotional roller coasters of life. I mean, anybody, you could talk to anybody these days and they'll tell you they've been through a roller coaster, especially in the last few months. This will start right after Hajj, inshallah ta'ala. So it'll start on the 21st of Dhul-Hijja, which is 11th of August. And you can find more details at productiveness.com/mindfulness. Brother Wadud has a video, a very short video. It kind of goes over this in detail, what you'll learn, why it's useful and important. But really, for me, again, being the productivity guy, I'm almost thinking like, how is it going to help me become more productive, right? But sometimes it's not really understanding. We live in a world where we're very distracted. We're very easily triggered. And to be able to not be reactionary, to be able to be more mindful and conscious, and most importantly, is to be able to really have this taqwa and understand what taqwa is, and to have practical skills to practice taqwa. This is priceless. This is powerful. Just being able to regulate our emotions. Think about some of the hard decisions you have to make. Think about the relationships you have in your life. Think about the situations you have to go through in life. If you don't have the skill, the practical skill to practice taqwa and to regulate emotions and redirect negative thinking towards calmness, contentment, then you just live in this constant roller coaster life, easily triggered by so many other factors. We recently did the mindfulness quiz here, and I think over 1,000 people have completed this quiz, and we have some incredible results of people of just showing, number one, the gap in our community of mindfulness practices. There's a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding, a lot of skepticism about mindfulness, but alhamdulillah, we're honored to have Wadud, who will present his heart-centric model, who go through his heart-centric model. For those of you who have not gone to our recent article, if you go to productivemuslim.com /blog, we have a whole, let me just actually look at it directly, it's called Hikmah. We have a whole article where Wadud kind of goes in detail about what is Hikmah, what is this heart-centric model? Whoops, sorry, wrong link here. And this heart-centric model, how it will help you. It will help you actually live, let me go up there, there you go. It will help you live a fulfilling lifestyle. So you can go to the Heart of Social Intelligence, where it goes into detail explaining what this is, how it works, backs with research, backs with Quranic verses, with hadith, and centers it on Luqman al-Hakim, Luqman the Wise. So it's a very powerful model, which I highly recommend you to go and check it out. So he's going to be teaching this over 6 weeks. So the first couple of weeks, we'll talk about healing in process, shifting from living in autopilot to intentional living. You understand what the heart model is. You understand neuroscience versus Islamic concept of mindfulness. You explore the scientific benefits of mindfulness meditation. You acquire both neuroscience and Islamic tools for training your focus. And you'll learn some of the methods that were actually taught by some of our inspired scholars, like Al-Muhasibi, Ibn Qayyim, Ibn Ata'illah. And you understand the science-based mindfulness meditation. So this is very powerful. We'll spend the first 2 weeks actually just going over this module. The second module is called Engage with Purpose. Once you kind of understood this idea of mindfulness, it's about understanding how do you take this forward and actualize the purpose in life. So how do you develop resilience that's connected to your excellence and optimism? And really, it's the idea of sabr and salah coming together. So the idea of purpose from an Islamic perspective, as well as modern research, the idea of having a statement of purpose, you actually develop your own statement of purpose. The idea of being the mindset needed to refocus when you steer off your purpose. And then what does purposeful meditation look like as well? And then on the fourth week, we'll talk about gratitude. Again, going from mindfulness to being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and really talk about the Quranic principles that connect to gratitude, the neuroscience-based benefits of gratitude, experiencing a mindfulness-based gratitude meditation. So the concepts and steps for reframing to upgrade from scarcity mindset to abundance mindset, which is one of, for those who are going to follow our work, talk about barakah culture versus hustle culture. Like barakah culture about abundance mindset versus hustle culture is very about scarcity mindset. And then the final 2 weeks, we'll talk about the rising with patient humility. So how to deal with difficult emotions. It's human to feel anger. It's human to feel, sometimes to feel jealousy. It's human to go through these, if your ego starts to act up. The issue is not to bury those emotions, but how do you actually welcome them and you regulate them and you kind of understand your strength, your weaknesses, the science behind emotions, and how do you understand your emotions? How do Imam Ghazali talk about emotions? How to use journaling as a practical tool for self-awareness and to regulate those difficult thoughts, difficult emotions. If you're dealing with a tough boss, if you're dealing with a difficult relationship, or if you're dealing with a tough problem, emotions play a huge role. And finally, thriving with compassion, which is how to really, show up in the world. Not just, a lot of people think mindfulness is about, me, myself, and I, my own little corner, meditating in a corner. But this is about taking that, once you've centered yourself, go outward. And how do you lead with compassion? How do you lead with, from a perspective of compassion and mindfulness? And how do you differentiate empathy and compassion? How do you practice compassion meditation? And of course, something Wadud has developed as well, the prophetic model of compassion. So this is some really, really powerful stuff. Again, I can't underestimate, and the impact this has. If you just have these skills, you learn these skills and make it part of you. And what's unique about this masterclass is we're combining spirituality and mindfulness. There's a lot of mindfulness programs out there, but this is the rare one where it's not about just slapping Islamic terminology on what's out there. It's really thinking from the ground up. It's saying, what is about faith that talks about this concept? How do we sometimes even challenge the mainstream mindfulness programs? How do you even, or augment or even add to? And that's part of the work we do at Productive Muslim, is about really connecting these two worlds and bringing the best, latest science and latest in Islamic mindfulness program. And really, and one thing I like about Wadud, if you notice today's session, yes, there are some sort of content and theories to learn, but it's very experience driven. So just like you experienced today live, his guided meditation, he has a lot. This is just the tip of the iceberg. He's got a lot of these tools that he works for, inshallah ta'ala, and it's faith-based and scientifically backed research, and as well get a lot of practical tools to help, inshallah ta'ala. So you've met Wadud Hasan, and again, you can check out his Mindfulness Matters program, check out Define 360, you'll see a lot of his other work as well. But again, we're honored to work with Wadud and to be, for him to basically offer his masterclass through the Productive Muslim platform. So really honored to have worked with him. We're excited to have you on board, inshallah ta'ala. This is an investment in you, an investment in these sessions, investment. You get lifetime access to recording and handouts. You get weekly support. Wadud is offering a lot of his time and attention to rededicating a huge chunk of his time for the Productive Muslim crowd, for you. So I hope you see the ROI of this is way more than you put in this. And it's something I'm hoping you just notice just in this 1 hour webinar. Imagine 6 weeks of learning this stuff is critical skills, help you deal with the uncertainties, negativities, and all the emotional coaster, inshallah ta'ala. So if this is for you, inshallah ta'ala, I recommend you to, really register now. Take chance, make that intention that you want to learn the skill to upgrade yourself. We do have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can take this course, literally take the first 3-4 sessions, and if it doesn't work for you, you can say, well, this is not for me. You can ask for a refund, no questions asked. But I'm hoping that this masterclass will open doors for you, inshallah ta'ala, that is very, very beneficial. Anything to add, inshallah ta'ala, to this? I think, again, I'm personally really excited. I'm excited to be part of it as well. Anything else to add, inshallah, to the masterclass?
Honored to be here, Muhammad, and just want to say that all the beautiful comments in the chat, really honored, and would love to see all of you inside the class. But until then, I need your du'as, inshallah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to guide us in bringing what Muhammad is saying in terms of this amazing program that we're putting together. May it be blessed, may it be accepted, may it be guided, and may it be super, super impactful and beneficial for all of us, inshallah. Love to see you in the class.
Ameen. I want us to switch over, inshallah ta'ala, to the Q&A. I know if you have a few minutes, is that okay with you, inshallah? Just a few minutes. Yes, we have some in the Q&A box, inshallah ta'ala. So some of the questions we got is, I guess in general, the difference between Islamic meditation versus secular meditation. And you've talked about Islamic mindfulness and secular mindfulness, but in terms of meditation, maybe you can mention some of the work of Professor Malik Badri and others as well, inshallah ta'ala, in this regard.
Sure. Are we taking the questions from here and going over them, or just kind of talking to?
Yes, so I'm going some questions. I'll be sharing the questions, inshallah ta'ala, just to see what's most relevant to the class. But you can go ahead, inshallah ta'ala, and answer that. So my first one on Islamic meditation versus secular meditation, inshallah ta'ala.
Sure. So, meditation is a word that sometimes can bring, like Muhammad was talking about, like this question in our mind that do we have meditation in our tradition? Because sometimes we see meditation being used by other faith traditions. But there are many contemporary scholars that when we're talking about the word muraqaba, which is deep meditation or contemplation, there has been different ways of translating it. Like Malik Badri, who's one of the pioneers in the field, has published his book Contemplation, and he talks about why instead of meditation he chose contemplation, which he felt was a deeper contemplation of God, and this was a soul-centric model of mindfulness. What we are also trying to develop here in the class. So, mashallah, there are examples, and even though the word meditation can be used sometimes to, in the English term or the sense of the term, understand that we're getting in a state of focus. But here we're talking about it from Islamic framework, framework that has been established by, a prophetic framework of, sitting and meditating. Like when the Prophet went and he was looking for an answer and he was meditating in the cave of Hira. So in that sense, we'll use that word. But yes, it is also in the sense of this Islamic framework of the term that we're designing the class around, inshallah. Hope that helps.
Awesome. Jazakallah khair. Some of the questions saying, how do you deal with, if you always, there's a lot of noise, distraction, stress coming from family, parents, spouse, children, how do you create the boundaries to practice mindfulness?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what we do in the class is that we do some guided practices, just like the one that I led today. And these are normally about 10 to 15 minutes. And we normally tell everybody, after every week, I give you a homework. And I tell you that this practice we've done together, if you can take 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes of calm, quiet time at a time where nobody's going to bother you, distract you, and you get in a state of mindful, the environment to calm your mind and body, and just go through this practice. You can listen to the audio and just go through the practice and see if you're able to do it daily. But additionally, what we do is we also share a tool, what we call micro practice, which can be done in just a minute, or even less than a minute. That, okay, here is one way to practice mindfulness, but if you're in the moment, there's so much going on and you're not getting time away for doing a dedicated practice, then you can do an integrated practice, which is just do a minute of, tools that we will share with you. So for example, taking a deep breath is a tool, but there are other tools that we'll be sharing for mindfulness, patience, humility, that you can do in the middle of a conversation or in the middle of a meeting or middle of having a difficult conversation at work, and you're just like, okay, you know what? I just want to ground myself and bring this sense of highest intention, or bring the sense of mindfulness of God. And here are the 3 steps that we learn in the class. So these are some ways that we will practice, but again, it takes practice. It needs some dedication. That's why the class is there to practice it together, inshallah, and try to increase. And it's all about practice. Whatever you practice grows stronger. So the whole concept of neuroplasticity is that you can retrain your brain if you practice and you dedicate practice. How long does it take? There has been different theories that, even with 21 days of dedicated practice, 8 weeks of practice, habit building work such as 66 to 200 days of practice. However, I think that 6 weeks of practice and doing it every day with a few minutes, inshallah, will be tremendously beneficial.
Just on that note as well, I'm going to asking, how can you practice 2 hours of silence every day? It's like a lot.
Yeah, that's a research that is coming out from Duke about 2 hours of silence. But I personally feel that mindfulness and meditation is just this state of mind to be calm and focused. So to me, reading a book is a form of meditation, and it is so true today than even before, because people are distracted. That people are so distracted they can't read a book anymore. So even reading a book and just having that quiet time, even just hiking or just going out in the nature and taking a walk, these are all mindfulness practices. And we will talk about all of these different ways of practicing mindfulness. There could be a walking mindfulness practice. There could be a sitting mindfulness practice. There could be a reading mindfulness practice. There could be a writing or reflection or journaling mindfulness practice. All of those together, if they're equal to 2 hours, I think we're getting to a very good point. It's not that everybody's going to be able to do it, but if we have those habits, and together they come together and they train we are able to train ourselves in a way that puts us in a better place to train ourselves in a better way, inshallah. One of the things that I would also say is that salah, wudu, the things that we already do, right? We bringing more intentionality, and we'll talk about it in the first 2 weeks, that how can we do mindful wudu and mindful salah to really focus on training mindfulness through things we already are doing, but bringing the heart and soul into them, inshallah.
Inshallah. I think we have this one something that Brother Muhammad said, my father was a doctor, passed away today due to COVID-19. I'm his eldest son. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. We ask Allah sincere condolences to you and to your family. So he's saying, my heart is shattered. My heart is aching. So how to deal with this? This is a huge emotional challenge here. If any advice to help him just be able to, be able to deal with the shaitan.
Just first and foremost, for everyone here, just taking a deep breath in, Bismillah. So to fully kind of landing and being in this space together with Muhammad and showing this sense of mindfulness and presence with him. Just being there for Muhammad together, just for a second. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. And, mindfulness is our ability to be present. And there has been research around empathy, and when you feel so deeply about someone and the empathic distress, that you feel distress when you lose them or when you have that difficulty. And there has been some research around the difference between empathy and compassion, which we will discuss in our Thrive with Compassion module. If you are able to show the compassion to people, and if you feel that the compassion is only coming from you, then it is definitely you're going to be drained. But when you feel that this compassion is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm sending this compassion and mercy, the rahmah of Allah, to surround my loved one, there is a different form of relief that comes. So to me, one of the ways to heal with this type of difficulty, of course, is to not ignore the emotion, but to just having a sense of, silence to process the emotion, taking a deep breath, making dhikr, making dua, and just pouring our heart out. But also having that deep sense of hope that we talked about today, that they're in the presence of Allah. They're at a better place. They are surrounded by the mercy and compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like the Prophet taught us a dua, that Allah grant them expansion and a beautiful entry. Now they're going back, returning to you. Oh Allah, grant them a better family than the family they had. Meaning that, joining them with other ruh, other souls that have passed, and giving them a beautiful resting place. So visualizing that mercy of Allah, it takes a sense of mindfulness, a sense of compassion, that is rooted in mindfulness of Allah, that can give us that relief. Again, this is where our faith and our iman is something that we're deeply thankful for, that, the going back. And there was a recent article about Surah Kahf as the antidote to the pandemic, Unproductive Muslim, if you've seen that article. Some beautiful conversation there as well about death. And that death is a time that a believer is meeting their beloved, meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So looking at that in that sense, and just having that sense of mindfulness of Allah, mindfulness of the mercy of Allah, to try to heal. But at the same time, it's okay to feel the difficult emotions. One of the things I would say, just pouring your heart out, making dua, having the deep sense of positivity and hope in Allah's mercy, also journaling or writing down your emotions and feeling, and then seeking support. Like the Prophet ﷺ taught us, the concept of janazah, the concept of going and visiting, and concept of sending our condolence. These are support that we have as a community, that we're not able to now hug each other and heal in that hug, right? Like the whole research about the signs of Allah in our body, like when we touch somebody, and when we have a physical touch for 8 seconds, it releases oxytocin, these feel-good chemicals. It heals the stressors in our body, and gives us this feel-good chemicals just by touching and hugging someone. And just hugging your family, your wife, your kids, and just kind of having that sense of support to do it together. Don't try to do it alone. Do it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, and do it with your family. But here, the 168 people that are here, just sending this sense of a hug to Brother Muhammad, and this sense of dua and presence, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heal you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you courage, peace, and tranquility to overcome the difficulty and the loss, and hold your father in mercy, and all Muslims that passed away in Allah's mercy. Ameen. That's all I can say, inshallah. May Allah guide us and bless us, inshallah.
Ameen. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again give us condolences to Brother Muhammad and his family, inshallah ta'ala. And actually related to this is actually a very good question on, does these practices, mindfulness practice, help with trauma, PTSD, and some of the psychological and mental health challenges people face in their lives?
Yeah, this is not, for some of those more official cases, like, the clinical cases of anxiety, depression, or trauma, or PTSD, I would recommend you to see a counselor. Definitely see a mental health counselor. Alhamdulillah, at our Define 360 panel, we have mental health counselors that I can refer you to. But what mindfulness does is it's a proactive way to build mental stability, proactive way to build emotional regulation. It's a proactive way to train our mind. So it's more of a training and development of the mind that we're focusing on, but spiritually rooted, God-centric, and a model that is Islam-centric, inshallah. But in terms of, if you have gone to a place where you need some intervention beyond this proactive and preventative measures that we're talking about, I would recommend seeing a counselor for that, inshallah.
Inshallah. Another question is, how does this cure attention deficit disorders? And what is the recommended daily routine for mindfulness?
Yes. So there has been a lot of research around attention deficit disorder, and a lot of the counselors that are working with ADD and ADHD are actually doing mindfulness practices in their practice. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a form of a therapy that's also used for anxiety, depression, distraction, are also using various forms of mindfulness. So there are some clinical sense of therapy and mindfulness that sometimes people need, but a lot of people are saying that just this preventative model of practicing mindfulness every day can also shift our brain, and they're seeing the research, the emerging research, that it has highly correlated with good outcome of greater focus and changes in your brain, increasing the gray matters in the brain. So in terms of how much practice should you do, there are a lot of mainstream neuroscience type of recommendations out there, such as 20 minutes a day practice. Like I was trained at Search Inside Yourself, which was born at Google to train Google employees about emotional intelligence, mindfulness, focus, productivity, empathy, effective team management. And the program recommends us, the teachers, to do 1 to 2 20 minutes practice a day to make sure that we deepen in our practice. I personally feel that if you just sat, 10 minutes or even start with 5 minutes and build it up to 10 and then 20 minutes a day, and just focus on, something that really works for you. There are different forms of mindfulness or contemplation or meditation that could work for you. Doing that, if it could be just a form of dhikr, but whatever you're doing, the anchor point doesn't have to be the breath. The breath is a training point, and it's really important to learn how to train with the breath. Initially, it might be difficult for some people, but that's okay. With practice, it'll be easier. Even it was difficult for me because I have light asthma and allergies. So when initially I was practicing, it was difficult for me to focus on the breath, and eventually with practice, alhamdulillah, it becomes easier. So I would say 20 minutes of practice a day. But again, I will go back to our own practices. Are you sitting and doing your adhkar in the morning and afternoon? And are you doing it with the mindfulness, qualities of mindfulness, like we did today's meditation, today's guided practice? Are you sitting with the Quran for 20 minutes a day? Just 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. Are you doing when you're making wudu, are you sitting down and making wudu? I have an entire khutbah around wudu and salah, for example. So I'll go back to saying, initially double down on the practices you already have, the adhkar, the Quran, the wudu, and the salah. Do them with this focus, calmness, mindfulness, and at that time, be present. That's our first, low-hanging fruit. On top of that, sitting and learning to reflect and contemplate and get into a state of mindfulness practice, that's going to be a cherry on top. We will do that in the class. We'll talk about that in the class, inshallah.
Righty, okay. Hibat asking, how do you practice mindfulness while combating waswas or intrusive thoughts?
Yeah, that's a big one. So, we're going to be talking about thoughts, and we'll be talking about Allama Suyuti's model of thought. And one of the practices we do in mindfulness training is called open awareness. When we have all these difficult thoughts or distracting thoughts or waswasa that comes to our mind, how do we focus our mind while these thoughts are passing through? So we'll be doing a specific practice. There's a practice in the neuroscience realm that is called open awareness practice. A lot of research is conducted around that. But in our deen, mashallah, there's practice around, just being self-aware of our thoughts and knowing where the thoughts coming from. Ta'uz, or just out saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, the 3 goals, and then how do we focus our mind? So we will try to incorporate that within our open awareness guided practice, inshallah.
All right, just 2 more questions. I think Samia is asking, so Samia is one of our, mashallah, she's going through Practice Masterclass, Advanced Masterclass, and I'm thinking also Money Masterclass. So now she's thinking about this Mindfulness Masterclass, and she's asking you've seen the curriculum for the Advanced Masterclass, Wadud. How does overlap was different from the Advanced Master, like Dr. Abdullah Rahman that teaches for those who know the program we teach at Tariq Muslim?
Yeah, so this starts with, this is a mindfulness-based class. We bring, also the neuroscience elements of mindfulness, which is important for you to learn from a leadership and character building perspective. It's also important for you to learn from an organizational leadership perspective. But on top of the mindfulness foundation, we build upon emotional intelligence. So we go deeper into some of the emotions that we're talking about, like building gratitude, building a deep sense of your unique purpose, building your own personal statement of purpose, learning about patience and humility from emotional regulation perspective, and then going into compassion research. So those are some ways that it is unique and it's going to differentiate, but there are going to be some overlap. And Dr. Abdul Rahman, mashallah, is doing some beautiful work around mindfulness and the breath work, and some of the models he's bringing from classical scholars. Some of that we will bring, but we'll also go a little bit different route in building emotional intelligence with the mindfulness foundation, inshallah.
Jazakallah. Final question from Shoful. Where can you find more of your work and your books, resources, anything that you've written, where people can follow you, shout out to learn about your latest thinking, writing, any programs you offer as well?
Yeah. So you can see the recent article that we did at Productive Muslim. If you've seen the Cultivating Hikmah article, we've deduced the heart model from the model from the Hikmah, or the Hikmah model of Luqman alayhi salam from Surah Luqman. We are also talking about the differentiating the Islamic versus traditional mindfulness work. Inshallah, the intention is to eventually write a book on the heart model, and to write a book around mindfulness, which I have attempted since last year, but it's going to need a lot more work. I haven't done a lot of writing. I have an entire series of khutbahs and meditations and mindfulness we've been doing for Muslims, especially on our Muslim-centric brand, which is called Define 360. So if you go to define360.online, you'll see some of that work, inshallah, and you can also see our channels on Instagram and Facebook that has a lot of our mindfulness meditation coaching videos and things like that. But this heart model and the masterclass is going to be one of the major ways that, inshallah, we'll have an imprint in the Islamic mindfulness world. So I would invite you to come in for this. Eventually, we will be doing a lot more writing, inshallah, but we're not fully there yet with the writing. It's more videos and mindfulness practices and all that online right now. With the Mindfulness Matters brand, we do a lot of corporate training, and it's more about creating these experiences for corporations, and they're a little bit private because people are kind of taking the work and booking us for workshops, and we try to lead them through this experiential leadership development based on mindfulness training that, alhamdulillah, most people so far has been finding very, very beneficial.
Awesome. Alhamdulillah. Barakallah feek. Jazakallah khair. Wadud, once again, thank you so much for this experience, and thank you so much for your knowledge and your wisdom, and for your humbleness, and really, you guys just saw the tip of the iceberg, inshallah. So I'm really excited about the program we'll get together with Mindfulness Masterclass. And even if you're not going to join us Mindfulness Masterclass, please do follow Wadud, his work at Define 360. Do follow his work in other platforms as well. And mashallah, he is a resource, a hidden gem in our community that, inshallah, we'll see a lot of, and we get to discover his work. He's bringing the best of mindfulness research, as well as grounding in our faith, which is a beautiful combination, inshallah. So with that, jazakumullah khair, and may Allah reward you and bless you all. Thank you so much for staying with us for 90 minutes. I really appreciate you all. Inshallah ta'ala, see you soon, and Eid Mubarak in advance to everybody. Hope you guys have a wonderful and mindful Eid. How about that? Let's have a mindful Eid. You can be mindful eating halwa. It's okay. That's part of the package. So inshallah, jazakumullah khair.
Yeah, the fasting you're doing is building that sense of mindfulness. If there's nothing else, I normally tell people that just don't forget to just take some deep breaths and just relax yourself throughout the day with so much going on. But especially the fasting these days, the du'as of Arafah, leading up to the Udhiyah, and remembering the lessons that we talked about, the 5 lessons, inshallah, and trying to incorporate them in your mindset and in your spiritual and emotional intelligence. Jazakallah khair.
جزاك خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.